I want to learn how to use my pressure canner, but I'm worried I'll blow myself up.
Welcome to the Jake and Wendy cooking show. Today we are making fresh creamery butter. Just kidding, we're canning chicken. That's right, we're gonna can all this chicken. This is like 25 pounds of chicken. We're gonna put it in jars and we're gonna see whether or not the pressure canner will explode and kill us all. Probably not. Maybe. Anyway, canned chicken. Pretty simple. This is a very good starting point for a lot of people who want to try their pressure canner for the first time. Basically, all you're doing is putting chicken into jars with some spices and salt, and then you're pressure canning it, and you're going through the process. So it's a very simple thing to do. We're going to go ahead and get started on that and show you exactly how we can chicken. You can do like chicken chili, and you can make different variations on this, but the most basic thing is to can chicken in a way that'll give you a good broth, and you can add it and make a meal out of it later. So we'll link some of the other videos that we think are really helpful, but we wanted to show you how we're doing it, and we're going to get through this huge pile of chicken. We didn't want to bore you with us chopping chicken for an hour and a half, so we went ahead and prepped everything, and we'll go ahead and describe that next.
The first thing that we did was we prepped the chicken, cut it all up. We prepped the jars, we boiled that, getting that ready to go. We got all the jars ready, lined up, cleaned up, sanitized, and then we got our spices over there that we're going to use to put in the jars with the chicken.
So the first thing you're going to do is get your jars ready. We just put these paper towels over top of them to make sure that they stay cleaned, because it was going to take a little while for us to get this chicken ready. But, you know, we're going to go ahead and tag team this, and we're basically going to use the funnel to fill up the chicken in the jars. Then we're going to add spices, and we're going to do this sort of assembly line style, so you'll get a good view of how we're going to do this. And then we'll get around to our lids and the next step of this. Go ahead and move that over back in there. And then you'll have room to do your jars, I'll have my room to do our jars, and we'll go ahead and get this assembly line going. We're going to go ahead and uncover the chicken. We're going to get going. We have chicken, garlic, minced dried onions, thyme, and salt. And we'll show you how we're going to go ahead and do this. So, step one, get your chicken tongs or your scoopers. Put your jar pretty close to the chicken here and just start filling it up. So I know you've been anxious to learn how to do this, honey. What are you hoping to get out of this chicken canning process and learning?
The number one thing is to get over my fear of canning.
And what do you mean by your fear of canning?
I'm one of those people who kind of think that if I use this scary looking canner over here that it's going to explode or something bad's going to happen.
Yeah. And what do you think so far of this chicken process?
So far, it's not so bad. I, normally cut chicken for dinner and so forth. And the thought of having canned chicken already done that I could just add to a meal quick at night would be wonderful.
Okay. Well, I've actually been the one who's been canning chicken and meals. And I first learned, well, I kind of learned from my grandmother years ago, but I didn't really pay attention. So what I started doing when we started, this latest homestead journey is I started gathering resources online, and we found a really good one in Homesteading Family. I know Carolyn has some good videos out there on canning foods, canning chicken. And her raw packed chicken video was actually very helpful for us. So we're kind of copying that here. A little bit different from what we're doing, but it's the same concept. We're We're getting our chicken ready. We're filling it up to about 1.25 inches to the top of the jar. And we'll pack it down here and show you what else we're doing. But the gist of it is we're just getting our chicken ready in the jars so that we can move on to the next step. And you know, we actually might have too many jars here for this amount of chicken. I know we had a lot of chicken, but I think we're pretty close. We'll see what happens. So we're just going to demonstrate on these first ones, and then we'll fast forward so you don't have to watch us putting everything in these jars. But you can see, you know, we're putting these jars down to about where the shoulder of the jar starts. That gives you about 1.25 inches of head space on this before you continue filling. So we're each going to fill up 4 jars, and then we're going to show you how we do the spices in this. It's pretty easy. It's pretty simple. You're literally just putting chicken in jars right now, and then you're going to put the other stuff on top, and then we're going to put the spices in. So we'll fast forward a bit and come back to the spices.
Okay, now it's time to put our spices in. The most important part is the salt. So you're going to put in 1/2 teaspoon of salt into each jar. And then we're putting a scoop of onion, dried onion. A spoonful of garlic. And a pinch of thyme. Now the spices, you can put more or less of those, but the salt is the most important part of the canning of the chicken. Next, we're going to take our jars and we're going to fill them up with boiling water. We're going to top them off until they're, you know, pretty close. We have our boiling water already set aside, and we're just going to top that up so it's about 1 inch in. And then we're going to take our little spatula. We're going to go down the sides. We're going to get all the air bubbles out of this. We're going to make sure that everything is down where it needs to go. we're going to take a paper towel, get it a little bit wet, and then we're going to just clean off just the top of the lid, or top of the jar, sorry. And then we're going to come over and we're going to get our lid for the jar. If I can get my magnetic stick here to work right. Thank you, honey. I put that on. And there you go.
And how tight do we tighten these lids, honey?
Not tight. Not very tight. Very tight.
Finger tight.
Finger tight.
Finger tight. So you just take your lid and you put it on your clean rim right there, and then you just screw it down just a little, just finger tight. Don't wrench it, just finger tight.
Now that we have our jars ready, we're going to get these jars and we're going to get them into the canner back here.
Now comes the truly dangerous part. And by dangerous, I'm joking. Okay, if you look at your pressure canner, this is an All-American 921. We love this canner. We highly recommend it. It's brand new. We've only been using it for about, I don't know, 4 or 5 months.
That's longer than that. You got it last fall.
Yeah, well, last fall. Well, we've been using it. Anyway, if you look at this canner, it says, caution, the outside surfaces of this unit may get hot to the touch. Contact between unprotected skin and outside surfaces of this unit during operation may cause burns. Always use protective gear, etc. So basically, this is a hot pot and it will burn you. It's already getting hot. Okay, so if you have to be told that cooking with hot pots can burn you, I would simply say, duh. So, in that way, most of this warning is just telling you it's a hot pot. Be careful touching a hot pot. It can burn you. So, if you're going to grab these, just use, pot holders, which is literally what they're for. They hold the pot. So, if you have to move this once you set it up, don't grab these unless you're using pot holders. The other danger that it says on here is, warning, open cooker safely. Be sure the pressure has dropped to 0 and you have removed the regulator weight, which is this little jobby here. This is a regulator weight. First, in order to protect you from steam burns and, I won't say explosions, but pressure situations. So really, be careful not to burn yourself on the pot, and be careful not to try to open this up when there's pressure in it. And also watch out for steam. So, we have a pot of hot water sitting right next to this with steam coming off it. And I'll open this and show you, there's steam. So whenever you're dealing with boiling water and pressure, you just have to be thoughtful of what you're doing. There's actually, if you look on the back of this, there's actually a little plastic button here. This little plastic button here will pop out and vent all the steam and the pressure inside here if it really does get to a dangerous level. And you can look inside and you can see and make sure that that little piece is in good shape, and you should inspect these before you use them. But generally, this pressure cooker and several others of this design have safety features so that your pressure cooker is never really going to explode on you. But what you have to be careful of is when you end your pressure cooking, you're not just going to pull this off, okay? Because then high pressure steam will come whistling out of here and could potentially burn you. It could also cause a pressure drop problem inside your canning jars that ruin your canning. So we're going to go through some of the steps here, but generally to watch out for the main dangers of this are burning yourself by grabbing the pot, and being careful about steam, you know, when you open and close it. You know, that's really the main danger for this. It's not as dangerous as it seems, and as long as you're following the directions on here, you'll be fine. So let's go ahead and start the next step of our pressure canning here. This is actually pretty easy. We've got it warming up here, so it's ready to go, and we don't have to wait for it to heat up. It's just barely kind of at a level of boiling, and we're just going to take our chicken and we're going to put it in. Now, I'm holding this with my hand because these jars are cooler. They're still, you know, we're going to warm them up a little bit, but they're not cold. We're going to put our jars in here. We're going to fill up our canner with our jars. What was that? What did I just hear?
Pop.
Okay, I'm going to be brutally honest with you. We made a very rookie mistake here. And how many of you can guess before I tell you what happened here? So we had chicken sitting on our counter. It had been defrosted, but the jars are still cold. And you know what happened here? What happened here is I had one jar that was just a little cold. And I had warmed it up, but it just wasn't warm enough. And when I put it into this boiling water, what happened was, let me turn this off since I'm going to have to start from scratch. What happened was glass expansion and contraction shattered the bottom of this jar. So I want to be careful in doing this so that I don't leave glass everywhere, but I'm going to show you effectively what happened here. Very carefully removing this. Now I'm not even going to try to save this chicken. I don't want glass anywhere. But here's what happened. This jar broke. This jar completely broke on the bottom because it was too cold and it went into a hot thing. So I'm just going to throw this whole thing out and I'm going to start from scratch. So this like I said, that's a rookie mistake. I was aware of what I was doing and I didn't think about it. And it broke my jar. So, that's okay. This happens. You know, if something like this happens, it's not the end of the world. You just have to clean it up and move on. So, we're going to go ahead and turn off the video and come back, because this is probably going to take me about an hour, maybe a little less, to get this cleaned up and heated back up to temperature so that we can try again. So, don't be a rookie. Don't make mistakes like me. There it is. The evidence of our shame. A pound of perfectly good chicken and a broken ball jar. So, I wanted to show this so that you could see that everybody makes mistakes, and if you're not careful, you can make very basic mistakes while you're doing this sort of work. So we've gone ahead and we've cleaned out the canner. I'm going to show you what we're going to do this time around. Rather than getting the water hot and then putting our stuff in and having to keep our jars, what we've done is we've gone ahead and we've filled water up, and we put our jars in and we filled water up, and what you can see is the water in the canner is less than half the way up the jar. You do not want to have the water go very far up. So if you look in here, you'll see the water's not very high up. It's about halfway up the side of the jar at most. And we've gone ahead and we've put our jars in here and we're ready to go. And this actually worked out pretty well, because what you're going to see is that our number of jars, we have 7 in this one, and we have 7 over here. We're not using this to can. This is just to keep them warm while we're waiting for the other to go. So we're going to be pressure canning in here, and we have the other jars kept warm so that when we put them in the new canner for the next batch, they won't shatter like that first jar. So that's where it is. We've loaded up the canner. We're ready to close it up and start the cycle. We we put our mistakes behind us. Now it's time to get this thing going. So we're gonna take our canner. We've got the jars in. They're all good jars. They're all finger tight. We've gone ahead and filled it up so that with the jars inside, the water is only about halfway up the jars or less. You never want to cover your jars when you're doing pressure canning because it will force the water into the jars and force the food out of the jars. That's why you keep it at a lower level on your jars, and then you keep the water in the canner low. You're just looking for steam pressure here. So this particular one requires an oil film to be all the way around the edge to properly seal. We've gone ahead and wiped this down with olive oil. And we're going to go ahead and put this down. And it's seated. We're going to go ahead and twist lock it so that it's in place. And then we're going to start putting on our pressure nuts. And this is very much like tightening, for those of you who have ever had to tighten a tire. I know this might not resonate with many people who've never had to change their tires or done any car mechanics, but what you're going to do is you're going to tighten this in a specific pattern so that you can get good even seating of the pressure seal on this lock, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So first thing first, get the twist, get it seated, and then get it twisted in, and then just lightly, just finger tight, not even finger tight, just tighten these until they just stop. Okay. Then what you're going to do is you're going to start tightening in a pattern opposite. So you're going to do a little bit of tightening here and then go across the pot to that one, and then go to the next one, and then across the pot to that one, and then go to the next one and across the pot to that one, and you're just going to keep tightening until it feels good. So first one here, we're just going to finger tight like right there. Then we're going to go back here, we're going to do the same thing, finger tight. Going to go here, just a little bit, finger tight, go across, finger tight, go over here, just finger tight, go back over here, finger tight. And what you should see is all the way around, this gap should be about the same width. All the way around. And then once I'm pretty sure of that, I'm just going to go all the way around, snug, snug. Do not crank these down too much. You're not looking to crank this down. You're just finger tight. Not too much, not too little. Voila. So I'm pretty comfortable with that. So go all the way around. It's pretty good. Okay. Now I'm going to turn the heat on. Now I'm going to turn this on high because I want this to come up to pressure, and we've got to bring that, pretty cold water, not cold, but, lukewarm water up to boiling temperature. And what you're going to do in this point is you're going to keep your weight off. Take this weight, set it aside. Do not have it on here right now. Okay. The first step in this process is to get it up to steam. So you're going to walk away from this for maybe 20 minutes or a half hour. Okay. When you start hearing steam starting to go psh, 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 you'll see it in a bit. That's when you know you're getting to a point where you might be ready to put your weight on. But for now, we're just going to set this completely aside. We're going to keep this on high, and we're going to wait until steam starts coming out of here, because that'll tell us that the water inside is boiling. It's not even warm to the touch yet. I mean, it's warm, but it's not hot. So we're going to wait for this to start steaming, and then I'll show you what you're supposed to do next. What we're starting to see here is there's steam coming out. You can see on the video there's just little wisps of steam coming out of the main vent. And there's times where it's thicker, and others we're almost at the point where we would be putting the weight on, but we're gonna keep getting there so you can just monitor. So I'm gonna go over here to the pot. I'm gonna put the microphone up to the pot, and you're gonna be able to hear it boiling. So you're gonna hear this boiling, this bubbling inside the pot, and it's gonna sound just like this. And then at the same time, your pot's going to be steaming. So I'm going to put this up here so you can hear the whisk. It sounds like a steam kettle that's about to start going. So you're just hearing that pshh. Steam is starting to escape the pot, and it's going to sound like that. Alright, so once you hear the boiling, and once you see the steam coming out of there almost full time with just a white column of pressure coming out of there, you know that you're ready to put on the weight. You're going to take your weight and you're going to put that weight on there. And what you're going to do is you're going to look at your weight, and around the edges there's different numbers. And each of the numbers corresponds to one of the holes on the weight. And if you're at a general sea level like we are, the general weight here is going to be 10 psi. So there's the hole that corresponds to the 10. I'm literally just going to pop it on there. Just like that. And you're not going to mess with this. You're going to get that on there. And you're going to leave it. And what's going to happen is this thing's going to start jiggling. And that bubbling that you see is actually steam that's condensing on the inside and then dripping down on top of the hot pot. So you can see that metal is nice and hot right now too. So that's going to start jiggling. We want to build pressure. And the reason that says 10 psi on there is that weight at that hole with that calibration will let steam out of the pot if it goes over 10 psi. So you'll start seeing this jiggle, you'll start hearing it jiggle, and you'll have steam escaping because that weight is holding the pressure inside the pot at about 10 psi and no more. We're going to show you now how the pressure is building over on the dial. So we have our dial over here, and you can see that pressure is starting to build right there. So now it's starting to get louder here in the kitchen. What's happening is that weight, or jiggler as we call it, is actually starting to jiggle. So in order to keep this going at a proper rate, I'm going to turn my heat down to about 6. And what'll happen is, instead of just jiggling and venting the whole time like it's doing right now, it'll calm down a bit and it'll jiggle and then let off steam and pause like it's doing right now, and then it'll start jiggling again in a moment. Yeah, there you go. And then it'll stop, and then it'll jiggle some more. And what you want is about 4 of those cycles per minute. Now that the jiggling is stable, I'm going to set my timer for 90 minutes. And this will be the first cycle. So 90 minutes, in case anybody doesn't know, is an hour and a half. So we're going to go ahead and set our timer for an hour and a half. And we'll come back when that cycle is done. Timer goes off. You're just going to come in here and you're going to turn off your heat. You're just going to turn off your heat. And it's going to simmer down. And it's going to stop moving like that. Turn off my timer here. Now, what you're going to do with this is you're not going to mess with this. This is still sitting here. This jiggler is still sitting there, and you still have 10 pounds of pressure inside. What you're going to do is you're just going to turn off your heat, and you're going to leave it alone. Just going to walk away from this, and you're going to wait. And just naturally, this pressure is going to come down to 0. And only then are you going to do anything else. So now that you've turned your heat off and you've turned your timer off, just walk away from this and let it be. And I'll come back and show you what to do next. Now that pressure is down to 0, we can go ahead and we can take off the weight. So we're just going to pop that off. And you hear it's just a little bit of sound, and then it goes away and we have no more sound. And now that that's going on, there's no more sound, pressure is equalized, there's no more danger apart from heat that there's going to be any problems here. So we can actually now start taking the lid off. So once you let that go and you make sure there's no pressure differential, you don't hear any air moving, you can go ahead and open this thing up. So we're going to go ahead and unscrew, starting from one side and going the other. Yeah, one, just loosen that up and then go to crossways, loosen that up, and then move on to the next one. You know, just going back and forth across, loosening them up. So moving on to the next one, moving on to the next one, moving on to the next one, and moving on to the next one. All right, now they're all loose. You can just unscrew them until they pop over. Just loosen them up so they flop over. There you go. Keep going. There you go. Pretty easy, pretty simple. You're just loosening it up. There's no more pressure to worry about. There you go. Now you grab that handle and you turn it a little bit counterclockwise. Grab it, grab it, grab it. There you go. Now lift it up gently and set it over here. There. And there you have it. There's our 7 canned chickens. Now we're going to pull these out and I'll show you. They're still extremely hot. Do not touch these with your hands. We're going to use a jar lifter and put them on the counter. You go ahead and pull your jars out. They're probably actually still boiling inside. Yeah, they're still boiling. So you got to hold these tight and lift them out. Look at that. So we're going to go ahead and pull these out, being very careful because they're so hot. We're going to line these up. This just smells amazing in here. And we actually used up most of the water in our canner, so we're going to have to top it off. Woo! Look at that. Yeah, if you look inside the canner, you're going to see this sort of oily sheen. Hopefully it's not too bad, but there's a little bit of oil in here, especially when you're doing chicken. That's just chicken fat that's come out of the cans during your pressure, and it's kind of leaked in, but there's not too much in here. So that tells us that we had a pretty decent amount of, for our proper levels in our cans, and they didn't leak too much. We'll go ahead and take a look at our jars now. You actually see the jars. They're still bubbling just a little bit inside these jars. And look at that chicken. Doesn't that look great? Yep, so we have canned chicken in here. It's literally still bubbling in the jars. And that tells you that it's very hot, very boiling. So this is going to be great. We see that they're looking good. We're going to let these sit and see what happens. And we're going to go ahead and load up for another batch in the pressure canner. So once you're done cooking and canning all of your chicken or whatever else you're pressure canning, it's important to take good care of your canner. Remember, you should never drop these. You should never bang them around. You need to be careful when you're cleaning them. And especially when you're doing meat afterward, you need to use a little bit of soap and water on the inside and get all that grease off, because you're going to have some of that chicken grease or fat or whatever animal fat that you're using. So I've gone ahead and cleaned up our canner, wiped it down, dried it off on the inside, and I resealed the edge with a little bit of olive oil, and it's ready to go for next time. So it's cleaned off, it's cooled down, you know, just lightly finger tight on this so that we can put it back in its spot over here in the counter, and it'll be ready to go for next time. All right, now that we are done with our canning episode, we have 14 quarts of chicken. That was about 26 pounds of chicken. And if you want to show everybody what we got, grab one of the not hot jars.
Those ones in the back.
Yeah, if it's not hot.
Here.
Hold it both, yeah, like that. All right, hold it up. So this is the chicken stuff that we have. You can see that fluid came out of the chicken, and it's still covered. It kind of boils down into pieces and looks kind of chunky in there, but it's canned. So this is fresh chicken with spices, and it is now a delicious, flavorful broth and meat mixture, about a pound and a half. in each jar. And this is great. I mean, we had some leftover stuff that didn't fit in the jars, and I went ahead and whipped it up for lunch. It was absolutely delicious with rice. So this is a great start to a meal, and it's a way of getting chicken into your pantry without having to be refrigerated. Now that we've done that, this was Wendy's first sort of hands-on chicken canning episode. So tell us, what were you afraid of, and how do you feel now?
I was afraid of the canner for the most part, just afraid that I would somehow do some part of the process incorrectly, and then there would be a disaster, explosion, or something would happen.
A broken jar?
A broken jar. So it kind of helped to show me that even when things like that happen, is somewhat easy to clean up, and it's not the end of the world. You can still finish your chicken and have good chicken to have canned and be eaten by your family.
So what do you think of the process? Do you think it's particularly dangerous?
No. I mean, you certainly have to know what you're doing and what the next step is and that sort of thing, but overall, no. You just have to be aware of what's going on, be careful like you would be with any other, dish that you're cooking.
Okay. And what do you say to people who are interested in doing this for themselves?
Just jump in and try it. I would say, maybe go slow. I was very thankful to have my husband right there with me to kind of like walk me through the steps and make sure I was doing everything correctly. But I mean, I think even if you were doing it on your own, just, watching some YouTube videos or, reading about it, having kind of like the steps written down in front of you so you know exactly what to do would be very helpful.
And are you excited to try canning other such things in the pressure canner?
I am. I'm very excited. Like you said, we tried some at lunch today. It was very delicious. And now I have these that I can pull from, in the future for our family. And it's, very easy to do that, and to try other meals, I think will be very helpful for our family.
And what did you learn?
What did I learn? I learned how to can chicken. Instead of actually watching my husband do it, I actually participated. So I feel more confident to do it on my own, or at least, for another time or two, have him right there next to me watching me do it from start to finish without maybe all of his help. It was nice to have the help for like cutting up all the chicken and all the prep and stuff, but I learned a lot.
Well, thanks for watching this episode of the Roaming Homesteaders. We hope you found it educational, that you enjoyed watching our successes and failures, and we hope it gave you confidence to use your canner. We have an All-American 921 canner. We recommend that family of canners. You can get them from several different places right now. If you need any recommendations, just go ahead and let us know in the comments. But it's not a scary thing. You can do this homesteading thing wherever you are, and it can be an adventure in your quest for a home. So if you like this video, make sure you click below and subscribe and click the bell so you're notified when our videos come out, and we hope to see you in the next video. Bye-bye.
Bye.